Hi, everybody. We're going to get started. We have two great leapers today. First, we have Christina Torres. Christina is a doctoral candidate in science education at Teachers College, Columbia University. She is a research associate at the center and the center coordinator at the Center for Sustainable Futures with a research interest in climate change education. Christina is also an adjunct professor at the Fashion Institute of Technology, part of the SUNY system, where she teaches an ecology and environmental problems course. I think we're missing some text. Okay, great. With that.
Thank you. We were just talking about how my students are just some of the most well-dressed people I've ever seen in my life. So yeah, I teach an ecology course to students that are going into sustainable fashion. Anyway, thank you all so much, and everybody who's online listening. I'm so excited today to talk about our Summer Institute, which is a program done here at LEAP in partnership with the center that I come from over at Teachers College, the Center for Sustainable Futures, and the New York City Public Schools Office of Energy and Sustainability. Really, with this program, we're thinking critically on how we can take all of this amazing research that is done at LEAP, other research being done on the broader impacts of the climate crisis, and local solutions being done here in New York City, and bring it into New York City public schools. So I'm going to frame a little bit about our research that was done way before the Institute of how we understand what teachers need, talk about the Institute, also talk a bit about a winter climate institute, which is fairly new. We did one iteration of it in 2024. We just had last week our second iteration of it. A lot of that is using what we learned through our LEAP Summer Institute to bring to a much larger network of teachers. And then open up for discussion, hopefully towards the end, for the implications of this work on higher education institutions. So we're really fortunate at Teachers College at our Center for Sustainable Futures to have a research practice partnership with the New York City Public Schools Office of Energy and Sustainability for over a decade now. And it's through this work with this part of New York City Public Schools where we've been able to get an inside look into how teachers think about climate change, how they're integrating climate change into their lessons before any of this teacher preparation and programs existed. And we know from surveying and talking to teachers that at least a third of New York City teachers are already integrating one module about climate change into their work. But we've identified four main barriers to teaching about climate change. There's a misconception that climate is just a science topic. It's not something that could be addressed in any subject cross-discipline, K-12. It doesn't matter if you're teaching a young student or a student that is going off to college. Knowledge gaps, resource gaps, and preparedness. Teachers want to be surrounded with a network of folks that are also working on this to bounce ideas off of. They want to also feel prepared to answer critical questions from students. It's not like students aren't confronting the realities of climate change, not just throughout their lives, their livelihoods, but also through media, right? So making sure teachers are prepared to answer those questions and engage with students. We've also, through surveys, have learned what types of questions teachers have specifically for scientists around climate change. Most teachers have never interacted with or engaged with a scientist. Their questions are incredibly broad, not just from understanding why what is happening, how we can move forward, but also really rich policy-related questions, questions that you wouldn't necessarily ask a scientist. So this is the inspiration for our transdisciplinary approach to the Summer Institute, making sure that we have experts across the sciences, the social sciences, psychology, education, etc. So the Summer Institute empowers New York City educators to engage in climate change education by building connections between the climate research that we're doing here at LEAP, local and social impacts, and K-12 classrooms. We started with elementary school teachers in summer 2023 because of the unique challenges associated with teaching this topic with young children. Also, the vast majority of resources that do exist to address climate change in classrooms is for older children. Last summer, in summer 2024, we did middle school teachers. As you could guess, this upcoming summer, 25, we will be addressing high school teachers. This is just a brief breakdown of the demographics of both of our teacher cohorts from 23 and 24. There was an emphasis on accepting teachers from Title I schools, so schools in the New York City public school system that have the most need. You'll also see here that we had a good percentage of sustainability coordinators. That's a unique thing in New York City public schools, where every school is mandated to appoint someone to this role called a sustainability coordinator. They don't necessarily need to be a teacher. They can be a school counselor, they can be an administrator, but it's a really interesting dynamic that we have here in New York City, where we actually have someone appointed to do this work. So activating that person and helping them build a network within their school is key to getting this information out there. We have 4 main learning objectives. Not only developing the teacher's own working knowledge about climate change, but situating that knowledge in a local New York City context, understanding the connections between climate change and their role as educators. And finally, the deliverable of this institute is for them to create a standard aligned module, lesson plan, activity that is aligned across grade subjects, and they can choose which ones that they want to address. So the kind of brief timeline of what a summer institute looks like, hence, even though the name is Summer Institute, we are working with these teachers for an entire academic year. So they apply in the spring semester. So right now we are actively accepting applications for our high school cohort that we will be working with this summer. We then work with them for an entire week over the summer. So you'll see cohort 1 was 4 days, cohort 2, which was middle school, was 5 days. We're then the next academic year meeting with them during office hours, during a fall meeting, and a spring meeting to continue to address challenges of them integrating what they learned over the Summer Institute, to connect them with resources that we have in higher education that they might not have access to. And ultimately, this year's academic year work ends in a final showcase in April, where they can showcase what they actually did with what they learned over the summer during the Institute. This is a brief look at, I won't go into the details, but a brief look at what each Summer Institute looked like. For our first iteration with elementary school students, we really focused on building community, teachers, I should say. We really focused on building community on our first day. On day 2, we started digging into the science on how to ask critical questions with young children in New York City. On day 3, we brought in curriculum experts from Teachers College to understand how can we use what we've learned to address critical reading, writing, and mathematics standards that we see in elementary school classrooms. And finally, on day 4, we created a lot of space for them to do group work on planning out what they will be doing for the academic year ahead. This past summer with middle school teachers, you'll see we expanded a day. We're like, we need another day with these teachers. So 5 full days, 9 to 5. And you'll see that the middle chunk of these days, 2, 3, and 4, are all situated in an area of LEAP research. The moving from the elementary to the middle school context created a new host of opportunities along with challenges. Instead of having teachers, elementary school teachers that are with the same group of students all day, we now have hyper-specialized teachers, right? In middle school, there's a separate science teacher, from a history teacher to an English teacher. So our goal with really grounding this in different areas of LEAP research was to spend the morning doing not only listening to LEAP researchers lecture, but doing hands-on components of experiments that they could actually do in the classroom with their students, and in the afternoon work with curriculum experts from New York City Public Schools, from Teachers College, to understand how do you take this cutting-edge research and bring it into a history class, into a 7th grade English class, an 8th grade science class. So that was really exciting. We have Kate, who actually zoomed in to give her talk on clouds. It was fantastic. We actually brought the teachers outside to look at and identify clouds. We have one teacher who's actively using the resources that Kate introduced in his 7th grade geometry class right now. So very exciting stuff. We have a growing interest in our program. As you could see, for our first iteration with elementary school teachers, we got 700 applications. For middle school teachers, we got almost 700 applications. So it's really exciting that not only our program the word is getting out, but there's a real growing interest among New York City educators to take part in a program like this. From 2023 with our elementary school cohort, we could see that teachers feel more informed about climate change. They are more convinced that human activity is contributing to climate change rather than natural cycles. This was pre-post. In particular, when we asked them qualitatively which sessions left the most impact on them, they noted sessions on the science of climate change, the practice of climate science, so not only showing them data and models, how do we actually collect that data? How do we know what we know? And sessions on the social aspects of climate change, in particular Leap Zone, Courtney's session, and Jay Shuttleworth, who is a TC alum, who actually did a session with the elementary school teachers on how to build a learning library in an elementary school classroom around climate change. And like I said, we work with them for the entire year. And in April of last year, we got to see what the elementary school teachers produced. And we saw an incredible wide range of lessons and activities that the teachers ended up doing with their students. Everything from a school counselor doing a social emotional learning aligned lesson for students to really think critically about how they're feeling about climate change, and used the characters from the Pixar movie Inside Out as a way to help these young students express their feelings. We had teachers, this is a 4th grade teacher, use PPM, air quality monitors, for them to take air quality measurements throughout different areas of their school. We had a special education art teacher use art as a way for students to address their understandings of the ocean. And finally, we had a teacher from Brooklyn connect climate to food access in a really interesting lesson that used shopping circulars from different supermarkets. At the end of, again, with our middle school teacher cohort, teachers felt more informed. But what I really want to highlight is this empowerment, and specifically this advice-seeking network. That's what we're calling it. How teachers not only are feeling more comfortable to answer students' questions about climate change, but they feel like they're connected to a group of teachers and peers that they can ask questions to and rely on related to this pedagogical practice. So what are our next steps? Our final showcase for middle school is coming up very soon, April 1st, 2025. You are all invited. Send me an email. It will be at Teachers College in the Smith Learning Theater if you want to see what our middle school teachers have been working on this year. As I've said a bunch of times already, we are currently accepting a new cohort of high school teachers. If there's a high school teacher in your life who would be interested in joining us, please let me know. I have a QR code at the end of the application. Our next Summer Institute will be July 21st to 25th, 2025. I do want to quickly touch on our Midwinter Institute, because instead of our Summer Institute, which we're looking at 40 to 50 teachers, this is a cohort of 500 that we had invited to Teachers College last midwinter, the 20th to the 22nd, 2024, and quite literally last week, the 18th to the 20th, 2025. And this is done as part of our research practice partnership. The Office of Energy and Sustainability does all of the coordination and program management of this. And the first iteration of this Midwinter Institute was to connect teachers with their partner organizations that they have at New York City Public Schools. So it could be city government, NGOs, CBOs, museum institutions, to show teachers the resources that they have available to them related to climate change education. This year, they took a different approach. They started on day one grounding the teachers in climate science, very similarly to how we approach our Summer Institute. It's great that we have this working relationship with them. We, at our center, then hosted unpacking sessions, small groups with teachers to really think about how they can start bridging this science into their classrooms. On day two, it was conference style, where they were able to choose which sessions that they went to related to climate, put on by partner organizations, with the goal by the end of this week for them to submit an outline of their scope and sequence, so their actual curriculum and the inroads to where they see climate change fitting into their existing curriculum. So this is the data from 2024. We know teachers are more informed about climate change after the Midwinter Institute. Again, talking about this advice-seeking network, they had positive attitude changes on climate change education after the 2024 Midwinter Institute, knowing how to integrate climate change into their lessons, understanding that climate change is related to the subjects that they teach, and having access to resources. We have a lot of rich data from 2025. Like I said before, it only happened last week, so none of it is analyzed yet. We have a lot of pre-post data, but we also have a lot of qualitative on-the-ground data where we had all different researchers from Teachers College going and talking to teachers, observing sessions. I do want to highlight one thing that we did do in this unpacking session on day one last week, which was grounded in this figure, which you probably are all familiar with. It's from the IPCC 2023 report, really looking at the generational differences of not just the past of the lifespan of different individuals, but really looking towards the future and how climate change is ultimately an intergenerational issue. So after the first science talk that our teachers had, we broke out into small groups, and teachers were able to look at the all of these different scenarios and understand and have discussions on what does this mean for their teaching. You may be familiar with this activity or did this during the annual meeting. So we're really excited that we had the chance to do this with teachers. So I'd like to end today quickly with thinking about the role of higher education institutions in supporting teachers around climate change education. We see higher education institutions as incubators, temples, and hubs that can empower teachers to engage with climate action. What do I mean by that? Temples that hold a whole lot of knowledge and a whole lot of resources that might not be accessible to folks outside of higher education. Hubs to connect partners. This institute is a great example of this, connecting New York City public schools with our center at Teachers College, with everyone here at LEAP. And incubators really cultivating talent, not only the next generation of undergraduate and graduate students, but also how can we bring in teachers and other community partners that might benefit from programs like these. And we hope that this partnership will serve as a model for future partnerships around climate change education, inspiring strategic collaborations between K-12 education systems and higher education institutions. And like I promised, here is the QR code, which brings you to the application. You could learn more about our Summer Institute there if you know any high school teachers. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to take them over email, and I will yield my time. Thank you. Are we doing questions now, or are we waiting to the end?
No, let's do questions now.
Okay, not fully formulated, but I love that you have this showcase where you bring, and I just want to make sure I understand it. You bring the cohort back to present basically how they have changed their behaviors based on this. So that's really wonderful. I'm curious to know if you also get feedback from them about like how the students themselves react to that and just to understand that whole process. And then I think again, it's just so wonderful to see follow-up evaluations taking place. It's not done as much as it should be. I am curious about if there's also some effort going into thinking about like rewriting curriculum at the New York State or New York City level more broadly. The question is, you can have these individual teachers who will take this on as some of their activities, but is there also like a larger, more institutional kind of initiative to sort of tweak or push or implement? Thanks.
Thank you so much for your questions. About the showcase blew us out of the water because last year was our first time doing it with our first cohort. Essentially, each group that worked together in pairs gave a 1-minute lightning talk of the things that they did with their students. And then we had all different calling them cubicles is not the right term, breakout sessions, where teachers brought student artifacts, all of the work that the students did, so whether that was artwork, written work, etc. Actually, the actual lesson plans on PowerPoint, where we were able to see what the students actually did, photos, their written work, sometimes videos of their reactions. So lots of really interesting, both like post-quantitative surveys that we have from these teachers, but also the actual rich qualitative work that the students did. In regards to curricula, it is an ongoing question and an ongoing effort. Nationwide. You might be familiar that New Jersey was the first state in the US to mandate climate change education across K-12. It's the only state that has that going. There is efforts to do this right now here in New York State. We are lucky to have a partnership with an organization called Subject to Climate, which makes climate change lessons cross-discipline K-12 completely open source. And during Climate Week last year, they unveiled their New York State hub. So I would say a lot of that work of thinking critically, of rewriting and making this stuff open source is happening in partnership with New York City Public Schools and Subject to Climate. So to answer your question, yes, and there's a lot of really interesting people working on it right now.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.